Imagine you could stand at Giza about 4,500 years ago. But forget the modern pyramid you know from photographs. There are no tourists, no roads, no cameras, and the Great Pyramid isn't finished yet. You're looking at a construction project ordered by Pharaoh Khufu. The pyramid will eventually rise to about 146 meters, making it the tallest human-made structure in the world for thousands of years. But right now, it's still being built. Archaeologists discovered an entire settlement near the Giza pyramids. It wasn't just a few temporary tents. There were large galleries, streets, bakeries, granaries, workshops, administrative buildings, and places where workers lived. The settlement is known as Hayt el Ghurab, often called the lost city of the pyramid builders. And this changes the picture of pyramid construction completely. Because the people building the pyramid weren't simply disappearing into the desert every morning. They were part of a massive, organized system. There were laborers, craft workers, administrators, food producers, and people responsible for moving supplies. One thing we know for certain is that limestone was being transported to Giza. A remarkable ancient document called the Diary of Mirer records the activities of an official named Mirer during the reign of Khufu. His team transported limestone from the quarries at Tura toward the construction project at Giza. These weren't random stones. Tura was an important source of the fine white limestone used for the pyramid's outer casing. The Great Pyramid originally looked very different from the rough stone structure you see today. Its exterior was covered with smooth, polished white limestone. But getting those stones to Giza was only one part of the problem. The workers also had to move enormous blocks around the construction site. Exactly how every block was raised into position is still debated. And this is where we have to be careful. Archaeologists have evidence for ancient tools, transportation systems, and construction infrastructure. But there is no surviving instruction manual explaining exactly how every level of the Great Pyramid was built. So when you see a reconstruction showing one specific ramp system as if it's proven fact, that's more certain than the evidence allows. We know the pyramid was built. We know enormous quantities of stone were moved. We know the Egyptians had sophisticated systems for organizing labor and materials. But the precise arrangement of every ramp and lifting method remains an open archaeological question. Now let's talk about the workers themselves. For a long time, popular culture showed the pyramids being built by enormous armies of slaves. The archaeological evidence gives us a more complicated picture. The workers' settlement and cemetery show a workforce that included skilled craftsmen and laborers. Some skeletons show evidence of serious physical work. So the pyramid workforce was not simply a crowd of starving people being forced to drag stones through the desert. It was a highly organized labor system. That doesn't mean life was easy. Moving and shaping enormous quantities of stone was brutally demanding work. The Great Pyramid wasn't simply built because Egyptians thought pyramids looked impressive. It was part of Khufu's funerary complex and royal ideology. The monument was designed to endure beyond the king's lifetime. And it did. Khufu died more than 4,000 years ago. The workers who built his monument disappeared into history. The settlement eventually disappeared too. But the pyramid remained. Think about what that means. The people who hauled the limestone didn't know they were creating one of the most famous structures on Earth. The people baking bread for the workers didn't know archaeologists would one day find their ovens. The official recording shipments of limestone didn't know his administrative notes would survive for more than 4,000 years. They were simply doing their jobs. And that's probably the most interesting part of imagining yourself in ancient Egypt. You wouldn't feel like you were living inside a history documentary. You would just be living your ordinary life. But around you, one of humanity's greatest construction projects would be taking shape.